I uncovered 7 sinister rules at an isolated Arizona gas station. What they revealed is terrifying. Sarah Tanner stepped out of her beat-up car and into the suffocating darkness of the Arizona desert. The eerie silence was palpable, broken only by the distant whisper of the wind and the faint buzz of the gas station's flickering fluorescent lights. It felt like the very air was thick with whispers, echoes of old grievances and secrets long buried. Her heart raced, memories of her estranged father flooding her mind, grief mixing with the unease of the unfamiliar terrain. She'd come to find closure, but all she felt was vulnerability in this ghostly expanse. Today, as she approached the gas station, the shadows seemed to stretch and wiggle ominously, taunting her with their distorted shapes. The isolated building loomed ahead, a beacon in the flat landscape, but it felt more like a trap. Inside, a tall, lanky attendant named Jim greeted her with a wide, unsettling smile. His eyes sparkled with a manic energy that sent a shiver down her spine. An odd sensation washed over her, the feeling of being watched, of being prey in a vast desert hunting ground. While she filled her tank, Sarah's gaze snagged on a strange pamphlet taped behind the counter, 7 Sinister Rules. She hesitated, a tingling sensation crawling up her back, before lifting it gingerly. Each rule began innocently enough: never fill up after dark. Avoid the old highways. Yet, an unsettling undercurrent pulsed from the text: missing persons, and spirits guiding lost souls. Jim leaned in closer, lowering his voice conspiratorially, sharing twisted local folklore about hunters who roamed these desolate roads, safeguarding the spirits of those consumed by the desert. With every word, tension escalated. The patrons drifting in and out felt wrong. Their laughter was too loud, too eager, discussing latest disappearances as if it were small talk. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest, a frantic warning. Hadn't she heard news reports back home about people vanishing without a trace in the desert? The gas station creaked ominously, its flickering lights buzzing like 1,000 angry wasps, amplifying her anxiety. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Sarah confronted Jim about the sinister rules, his charming facade slipped. The smile faded, replaced by a predatory gleam in his eyes. Some rules are meant to be broken, darling. You just have to know when. The words hung in the air like a noose tightening around her throat. Just then, a loud crash echoed from the back room, an ominous reminder that danger lurked nearby. Panic shot through her veins. Sarah clutched her keys, palms sweating, adrenaline surging. The gas station felt cagey, shadows lengthening, eyes still watching. She was racing against the very silence that had enveloped her, the darkness pressing against the walls like it was alive, hungry. With every breath, she could feel the weight of the eyes in the room, the oppressive dread wrapping around her like a suffocating blanket. Could she trust anyone here? The rules whispered in her mind, a chilling echo reverberating through her panic. And with each heartbeat, Sarah knew she had to escape before the desert consumed her too. What was waiting for her beyond the door? The crash had sent a jolt of fear through Sarah. It sounded like something or someone had fallen. Instinctively, she turned toward the noise, her heart racing. Shadows danced wildly in the dim light as the fluorescent bulbs flickered yet again. She needed to act fast. Every moment felt like a slow unraveling, the threads of safety snapping one by one. Jim, she forced out, her voice trembling. What was that? He merely shrugged, his grin back in full force, but it felt more sinister now, like a wolf flashing its teeth before the attack. Just the storage room. It's a dangerous place after dark, you know. The hairs on the back of her neck prickled. Sarah glanced at the door, her escape route beckoning with urgency. But the other patrons, those seemingly harmless faces, now seemed predatory, their conversations shifting. They flicked glances at her, whispers trailing like smoke as if they were conspiring about her next move. "Are you going to be here long?" one man asked, his voice dripping with feigned sincerity. "Just passing through," she retorted, her defiance tinged with the tightness in her throat. She scanned the station for an exit, the cloying atmosphere making it hard to breathe. Every instinct screamed at her to bolt, but the thought of stepping back into the vast desert held her in place. "Better hurry up then," chimed a woman with too bright lipstick, a manic gleam dancing in her eyes. "Nightfall comes fast. You don't want to be out there, do you?" "No," Sarah said, her stomach twisting. "Definitely not." Suddenly, a scream cut through the gas station like a blade, startling everyone into silence. The scream echoed from the back raw, chilling, a sound born from pure terror. Her heart thundered as she stole a glance toward the back room. What was that? Jim, still wearing that unnerving smile, nodded toward the sound. Maybe it's just another rule being broken. In that moment, the ground shifted beneath her. She felt dizzy, disoriented. "I need to leave," she whispered more to herself than anyone else, gripping her keys tightly enough to imprint them into her palm. Ignoring the growing anxiety spilling from her surroundings, she dashed toward the door, her fingers fumbling with the handle. The cold metal felt wrong in her grip, caught in the juxtapositions of the unnerving atmosphere. The door creaked open, revealing the dark expanse of the desert waiting beyond, and then she hesitated as a low growl resonated from the shadows inside, echoing off the grimy walls. Frantic, she turned back to the room only to find every pair of eyes fixed on her, hungry and predatory. "Sweetheart," Jim called, his voice now dark and velvety, slithering into her ear. "You're not going anywhere." "Not yet." The other patrons closed in, and dread filled her as she realized she was encircled, with nowhere to go. They whispered ancient words, invoking something deeper, a nightmare she couldn't understand. The air was thickening around her, taut with the weight of ominous intent. Before she could react, Sarah lunged forward, breaking through the throng, tearing past bodies, desperate for freedom. She burst outside, the dry heat slapping her face, but the desert remained unwelcoming and endless. She stumbled into darkness, no safety in sight, howling winds swirled around her, but she pressed on, heart racing. Just as the gas station faded behind her, a shadow flickered in the periphery. Something was watching her from the depths of the desert. "Run, Sarah, just run," she repeated like a mantra, but as the night grew darker around her, she couldn't shake the palpable sense of being hunted. In this desolation, her search for closure had turned into a terrifying chase. A movement caught her eye, a flickering light far off, promising nothing but more mystery. As Sarah raced toward it, she felt that familiar, sinister feeling creeping back, pulling her deeper into the secrets of the night. What waited for her in the darkness? And was the gas station merely the beginning of something far worse? She ran, each step kicking up a cloud of dust behind her, breathless gasps escaping her lips. The flickering light became her beacon, pulsating, almost taunting. It danced in and out of sight, like some cruel mirage. As she neared, anxiety twisted tighter within her. The light illuminated a dilapidated shack, its weathered wood creaking under the weight of the night. The door swayed slightly on rusty hinges, almost inviting her in. A surge of adrenaline fueled her as she pushed the door open. The air inside was stale, tinged with despair unlike anything she'd ever known. "Hello?" she called, voice shaking. Silence answered, save for the distant howl of the wind. She stepped inside, heart pounding, her eyes scanning for any signs of life. Dust motes danced in the thin beam of the flickering light bulb overhead, outlining the small space cluttered with broken furniture and rotting boxes. On the far wall, a bulletin board covered in faded photos and handwritten notes caught her eye. One note stood out, the ink smeared, incomplete, perhaps due to another desperate soul trying to escape. "Don't fall for them, they come at night." Her pulse raced as her mind wrestled with understanding. Who were they? And why had this been left behind? Sarah's instincts screamed that her time was running out. She glanced back toward the door. A chill crept down her spine, a sensation that she was far from alone. "Get out while you can," a voice whispered from the shadows, smooth and eerie as glass. Sarah spun around, her breath hitching. The figure that emerged was draped in shadows, a slight grin splitting a gaunt face. "You shouldn't be here. It's dangerous, too dangerous." "Who are you?" she stammered, eyes darting to the door, her escape route growing more distant. "Just an observer," he replied, his voice low and conspiratorial. "I've seen what they do to wanderers like you." He stepped closer, revealing sunken cheeks and eyes that gleamed unnaturally. "You should go back before they come." "In the gas station, you mean those people?" He nodded, the grin fading. "They offer comfort, but it's all a trap. Lure you in, feed off your fear. You're not the first, and you won't be the last." Unsure whether to believe him, Sarah's instincts wrestled against her desperation. "I can't go back. They're waiting for me." "Then you're already lost," he replied, and his voice turned vicious, the desperation morphing into disbelief. "No one makes it out." The door rattled, drawing their attention. Thunder rumbled in the distance, threatening a storm, weaving through the tense atmosphere. Her heart seized. "Stay close," he warned, urging her toward the back of the shack. "We have to hide." She didn't know if she could trust him, but the gas station's grip tightened on her mind. The man pulled her behind a stack of old crates just as the door burst open. Shadows loomed large against the flickering light, and the air grew thick with an oppressive presence. "What are we going to do?" she whispered, panic threatening to overtake her. "They're searching, but they won't find you if you stay quiet." His eyes widened, filled with fear that fueled her own. "If they get you," the shadows swarmed into the shack, voices muttering incomprehensible words. The shadows flowed like fog, seeping into every crack and crevice, searching for something or someone. Desperation clawed at her throat. She pressed closer into the shadows, heart pounding like a war drum. The whispers grew louder, the air electric with dread. Would they find her? Would they take her back to the gas station, back to Jim, back to whatever nightmare lay waiting for her? The figure next to her held his breath, eyes locked on the intruders. Sarah's mind reeled. She had to escape this nightmare, but how could she when darkness was closing in around her? And then she saw it. A glimmer beneath the floorboards, barely visible but enough to ignite a flicker of hope in her chest. What was it? A way out? Or a path deeper into the horror? "I have to get that," she whispered urgently. But would reaching for it mean surrendering to the darkness too? What lay beneath? Only time would tell, and time was running out. The shadows whispered, filling the cramped space with an unsettling cadence. Sarah's heart raced as she weighed the glimmering object against the encroaching terror. Did she dare reach for it? The figure beside her seemed to sense her struggle, his features shifting over a moment of anguish. "Don't," he muttered, voice barely above a breath. "It's a trap." She glanced at him, the urgency in his eyes fighting against the instinct to flee. Panic surged, clouding her judgment. The shadows slithered closer, their muffled voices blending into a disjointed chant. "Where are you?" one of them hissed, each word reverberating with malice. The door creaked wider, allowing a gust of frigid air to slice through the shack. It sent shivers spiraling down her spine. Fear strangled her, but the flash of light beneath the floorboards was tantalizing. It flickered like a beacon. But what kind of light was it? "Stay still," the man beside her urged, gripping her arm tighter. With a quick glance at the door, Sarah steadied her breath. She had to decide. The light could mean salvation or doom. Shadows rolled like waves, probing every surface as if hunting for prey. Something instinctual in her told her that if she didn't act now, they might never get another chance. "Just a second," she replied, determination sliding into her voice despite the trembling. With a swift motion, she crouched, reaching toward the light. The floor creaked ominously, threatening to reveal her presence. Her fingertips brushed against cold, rough timber and then found the glimmer a small metallic object, intricately carved, reflecting the little light that managed to break through. Mystified, she pulled it free, holding it closer. "What is that?" The man whispered, dread creeping into his tone. "It feels important," she breathed, rising with it in her grasp. But the shadows had paused, and suddenly the air shifted. "Bring her to us," a shadowy voice commanded, echoing through the small space. The shadows swirled, reacting to her action, intensifying their presence as dread seeped into the corners of her mind. "I can't go back," Sarah shouted, the object trembling in her grip. It was a key, its surface warm despite the chilling air. "Then use it," he urged, panic tinging his voice. "Find a way out." But the shadows shrieked, swirling in chaotic spirals, gathering like storm clouds ready to unleash hell. She could feel the fear wrapping itself around her like a choking vine. Thoughts raced, clashing like thunder in her mind. Was there really a way out, or had she just unleashed another level of horror? "Follow the light. Find the exit," the voice screamed, rising above the tumult. A sliver of light beneath the boarded-up window flickered, battling against the darkness. The shack seemed to tremble as fear morphed into something else, defiance. "Run!" the man cried, pushing her forward. She stumbled, the key clutched tight in her hand. With heart pounding, she dashed toward the light, ignoring her instincts to look back. But the shadows surged, a tide of darkness, ready to swallow everything alive. The key felt heavy, an anchor to her sanity as she hurled herself through the tight space, reaching for the window just ahead. Small shards of glass glinted, waiting. Would this be her salvation or her demise? In that split moment, she could feel the shadows grasping behind her, reaching with outstretched fingers. As she dove for the light, the room shook. But then something cold latched onto her ankle, pulling her back into the depths. Sarah screamed, the sound drowning in the cacophony as darkness tugged her down. What was waiting for her in that void? And who would she leave behind if she succumbed? As she clawed against the grip of night, the shadows shrieked louder, each echo wrapping around her soul. She had to find the key of survival or risk losing everything. Before her mind could grasp the horror awaiting her, she was yanked into the darkness, gasping, alive yet tethered to an unknown fate. And somewhere beyond her grasp, the key glowed, flickering with a promise. But was it salvation or the trigger to a nightmare more profound? The answer lurked just out of reach, and she was running out of time. The pull of the darkness was relentless, a weight pressing down on Sarah's chest. She struggled to breathe, the cold tendrils wrapping tighter around her ankles as she flailed helplessly. Fear coursed through her with a sharpened edge, reminding her this could very well be her last stand. "Hold on!" the man shouted, his voice rising above the cacophony of murmurs and shrieks. Desperation spilled into his tone, igniting a flicker of hope within her. If only she could reach the key. Its glow persisted just out of her reach, pulsing like a distant heartbeat. Suddenly, the grip on her ankle slackened. She gasped, propelling herself forward, clawing at the earth beneath her. A surge of adrenaline fueled her as she felt the warmth of the key beneath her palm. It pulsed vibrantly as if alive, urging her to listen to its call. "Sarah, grab the window ledge. It's our only chance," implored the man, scrambling nearer, his eyes wide with fear and urgency. They were running out of time. The shadows rallied, sharpening their focus as if preparing for a strike. They rumbled in unison, a low growl echoing off the walls. Every whispered taunt, every accusation they hurled chilled her to the bone. With a swift motion, Sarah swung her legs toward the window, kicking off the jagged wooden frame. Her fingers grazed the shards of glass, slicing her palm. Agony shot through her, but she clenched her teeth, gripping the window ledge as she hoisted herself up. The moment her body cleared the frame, a change came over the room. The shadows recoiled as if facing a sudden light. She glanced back, catching a glimpse of something dark looming, an even larger presence unfurling like smoke. It twisted and coiled, looming above the man who still struggled behind her. "Come on!" she cried, extending her hand to him. But panic danced in his eyes as he grappled with a grip from the shadows that threatened to drag him away. The warmth of the key pulsed fiercely, urging her to make a choice. "Leave me. Just go!" he shouted, his voice strained. The terror of abandonment tore through her. She couldn't and wouldn't leave him to this fate. But the darkness was spreading rapidly, ensuring that every second felt like an eternity. There was no time for doubt. "Use the key," he insisted. "You need to leave. Not without you." Her voice cracked, consumed by desperation. She reached for him again, but her strength faltered. She clutched the key tighter, feeling its warmth spread through her fingers. Perhaps it could help. "Sarah, please." It was now or never. She grasped the key and shouted, "Let him go." With a jolt, she plunged the key into the air, as if the force of her will could shape the shadows themselves. Light exploded from the metal, blinding and powerful. The shadows shrieked, howling in disarray as the brilliance washed over the room. The darkness inched back, but not without fighting. Tendrils lashed out, striking at Sarah, seeking any purchase in her flesh. She winced but held her ground. "Now. Jump." The man's voice punctured through the turmoil. Sarah dove back into the window's embrace, catching him just as the shadows frantically rolled towards them. Together, they tumbled to the ground outside, gasping for air, the chill of the night wrapping around them. But even as they escaped the shack, the light from the key flickered uncertainly. The shadows still writhed within. They hadn't escaped unscathed. "Did you see their faces?" he whispered, glancing back as fear took root again, a haunting terror lingering in his eyes. But she didn't need to look. She felt it. The fear that still scoffed at their victory was palpable. What did we unleash? Above them, the moon hung heavy, eclipsed by an approaching storm. The air thickened as tension coiled tighter around their reality. Something was still pursuing them, and they weren't free yet. The key pulsed ominously in her grip, a constant reminder that their fight was not over. Where would this newfound path lead them? And what darkness lay still beyond the safe reach of the moonlight? They took a step back from the shack, and the wind howled, carrying with it the chilling whispers of what had been awakened. The wind howled louder, as if the very earth was warning them. Sarah's heart raced as she pulled the man closer, both of them aware that even in their moment of escape, they were not alone. The shadows that had been vanquished inside the shack still existed, lurking just beyond their sight. "Where do we go?" he gasped, peering into the density of the night, eyes wide with panic. "We need to find shelter," Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the tremors in her hands. She clutched the key tighter. Its warmth felt like a pulse within her palm, offering some solace against the chilly grasp of fear that wanted to swallow them whole. "We can't stay out here." Their feet began to move instinctively, propelling them through the underbrush as darkness threatened to close in. Every crack of a twig beneath their shoes sent adrenaline coursing through their veins. Every rustle in the trees made them jump. "You were amazing in there," he said suddenly, glancing sideways at her. "You really saved me." "It was the key," Sarah murmured, struggling to keep her voice from quaking. "But how long will it protect us?" As if grappling with the very question they pondered, a chilling laugh echoed in the distance, raspy and mocking. It seemed to dance just beyond the limits of comprehension, chilling them to the bone. She stopped. "Did you hear that?" He nodded slowly. "It's just in our heads, no?" she interjected, urgency mounting in her chest. "That wasn't just in our heads. We have to move." They ducked low under a thick canopy of trees, shadows stretching long as the moon shied from view. The key glowed brighter, casting an eerie light that pushed back against the night. "What if the light draws them closer?" he whispered, fear flickering in his eyes like the key's glow. "Then we have no choice but to keep moving," Sarah said, the resolve hardening in her belly. They pressed forward, their surroundings growing denser and the air thicker with impending dread. With every footfall, she could feel the weight of something watching, lurking just out of sight. An instinctive trembling gripped her as she felt an ache in her joints, a heavy reminder that fear was a force of its own. They stumbled across an old, run-down gas station, its flickering neon sign scarcely illuminating the dirt-splattered windows. "Over there," she said, pointing toward a small door that hung dangerously off its hinges. As they crept closer, an unease settled in. The door creaked open, revealing an almost playful darkness that beckoned them inside. She hesitated at the threshold, a cold fist wrapping around her heart. "Do you think it's safe?" he asked, waiting for her lead. "Safe's a relative term right now," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Pushing the door wide, they stepped inside, the musty air rushing at them like an unwelcome embrace. The gas station was cluttered with dust-covered items, rusted appliances, and shelves lined with ancient snacks. Everything felt forgotten, suspended in a time that had long passed, and yet, the whispers started again, floating through the aisles like spirits already aware of their presence. "I don't like this," he murmured, eyes darting around the room. "Neither do I," she admitted, that stirring sensation of being watched creeping back. With a decision that felt dangerously intuitive, Sarah moved toward the back of the store where an ancient bathroom sign hung askew. Just as she touched the door, an impossibly cold breeze swept through the station. "What was that?" he stammered, shivers running violently down his spine. "I don't know." The key pulsed again, hotter now, as if resonating with the building tension. And at that moment, something skittered across the floor, sending a collective gasp from both of them. "Get behind me," she said, raising the key as if it were a torch to combat the encroaching shadows. And then, with a sense of foreboding that tightened around them, they heard that laughter again, closer this time, deeper and more threatening. What if this is what they wanted? He breathed, eyes wide with realization. With their options dwindling, Sarah met his stare, knowing that the very darkness they feared was crafted by something beyond their understanding. "Maybe we should leave," but as they turned to flee, the door slammed shut, locking them into the depths of an unseen terror. "What now?" he gasped, panic flaring. "Just hold on to the key. We're not done fighting yet," she steeled herself. Darkness surrounded them, and somewhere in the abyss, that chilling laughter echoed once more. What had they walked into? And was there even a way out? The bathroom door creaked open just a fraction, revealing a tiny sliver of darkness that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. Sarah swallowed hard, clutching the key tighter. Her fingers felt slick with sweat, and she could hear the rapid thumping of their hearts echoing in the heavy silence. The laughter grew a notch, lingering like a shadow on the walls, taunting them. "What should we do?" he whispered, the tremor in his voice sending shivers down her spine. "We have to find another way out," she replied, scanning the room frantically. The shelves loomed ominously, like silent sentinels watching them from the dusty corners. Just then, the fluorescent lights overhead flickered violently, casting ghostly shadows across the floor. In a panic, Sarah turned toward the front of the gas station. The entrance loomed like a mouth ready to swallow them whole. But it wasn't the exit that caught her eye, it was the back wall, where something glinted faintly metallic, inviting. "Stay close," she instructed, forcing her legs to move despite the insistence of her instincts screaming at her to run. As they stepped away from the bathroom, the chilling laugh twisted in the air again, warping around them. "They're coming for us," he muttered, urgency crackling in the air. Feeling the heat from the key wane, Sarah picked up her pace. She reached the wall, crouching down to examine the object that glimmered a rusted keyring, several keys intertwined like fingers wrapping around a secret. "This could be what we need," she whispered, the words catching in her throat as she realized the implications. The keys might unlock whatever was binding the doors around them, opening new paths or possibly unleashing even worse horrors. Jack's eyes widened. "But what if it's a trap? That's a risk we have to take," she said, the edge of her voice steely. Staying here means they will catch us. She plucked the ring from its resting place, and as her fingers grazed the cold metal, a sudden surge of memories flooded her mind, visions of shadows twisting in the gas station, marionetted by an unseen puppet master. A warning. What is it? Jack asked, concern etching lines into his face. Nothing, she lied, shaking off the intruding thoughts. Let us try these keys. With a grimace, she turned back to the clustered doors. Her heart pounded as she tried the first key in the front entrance. It slid into the lock but refused to turn. Throbbing dread pooled in her stomach as she fumbled through the remaining keys, each attempt met with the unforgiving grip of despair, and then, without warning, the rusted hinges of the bathroom door creaked wide, revealing a figure draped in shadows. Its eyes glinted like twin stars in the void, a gaping maw poised to laugh in delight at their terror. "Let me help you," it hissed, each word rolling out like thick smoke. "No." Sarah gasped, backing away instinctively. The key blazed back to life, illuminating the figure, yet it seemed impervious to the light. It moved closer, the laughter rising again, sinister and enveloping. "Do you really think the key can save you?" Jack clutched Sarah's arm, pulling her away from the advancing shadow. "There's gotta be another way," he shouted, panic breaking through their fragile hope. Just then, from behind the figure, a door they hadn't noticed before began to creak ajar, a sliver of a realm beckoning them with a whisper. "Go!" she yelled, propelling them forward, away from the chilling laughter that echoed in the depths of the atmosphere. They barreled toward the mysterious door, half aware that the darkness was clawing at their backs, hungering for their very souls. As they crossed the threshold, the key flickered violently in her palm, radiating heat. They stumbled into the blinding darkness, leaving the laughter behind. But then, with a gut-wrenching realization, Sarah froze. What if this was just the beginning? That thought gripped her like an iron vice, leaving a buzzing uncertainty echoing deep within. And there, delving into the very heart of terror, they sensed it, the silence of the key's power slipping away, poised on the edge of something far worse than they had ever imagined. What awaited them in this new darkness? The darkness enveloped them, swallowing the faint light from the key. It felt as if they stepped into a void, a place where sound and time ceased to matter. Sarah clutched Jack's arm tighter, her heart drumming a desperate rhythm against her chest. She could barely see him, just a silhouette beside her as they ventured deeper into the unknown. "Where are we?" he whispered, his voice barely audible over the pitch-black silence. "I don't know, just keep moving," she replied, forcing herself not to think about what might be lurking in the shadows. With every step, an oppressive weight pressed down on them, thick and suffocating. The air felt colder, and the smell of decay hung heavy like a shroud. Sarah squinted, searching for any hint of light or structure that could lead them to safety. Instead, all she saw was an endless abyss of black. Suddenly, a muffled sound broke through the silence, a throaty whisper that seemed to slide along the walls like a serpent. "They are close, so close." What was that? Jack's voice trembled, a stark reminder of their perilous situation. "Just keep moving," she urged, her voice tinged with panic. The key in her hand pulsed weakly, but it wasn't enough to illuminate their surroundings. It felt like a warning, flickering in her grip as if aware of something they weren't. The whispering grew louder, merging into frantic giggles that echoed off unseen surfaces. Sarah's breath quickened as she felt eyes boring into them, an unseen audience waiting for their next move. "We need to get out of here." But as they pushed forward, the ground began to shift beneath them, the darkness curling and swirling as if alive. They were no longer just walking, they were sinking into the very fabric of the shadows surrounding them. Jack stumbled, barely keeping himself upright. "Hold on!" she shouted, yanking him up, but it felt as if the darkness was clutching at their ankles, pulling them deeper into its throes. Then, a blinding flash lit the space around them, illuminating a grotesque landscape of twisted metal and sickly hues. They were inside a chamber of distorted reflections, a hall of mirrors that warped their images into grotesque caricatures. Suddenly, the laughter escalated, reverberating off the walls in chilling waves. No. This isn't real. Jack shouted, grappling with the panic that threatened to overwhelm him. Stay with me. Sarah shouted back, her eyes darting around the room searching for a way out. And then she saw a flickering light at the end of the hall, glimmering like a lighthouse amidst the stormy sea of horror. There! She cried, pointing toward the beacon. We have to get to that light. As they ran, Sarah could feel the air thickening, almost like hands reaching out to restrain them. With every step, the whispers transformed into incoherent shouts, a cacophony of maddened voices spiraling around them. Not here, turn back, it's a trap. Ignoring the voices, they pressed on, heads down, determined to reach the light. But then, something snagged on her clothes, a jagged edge that felt like claws, pulling her back. Sarah! Jack screamed, lunging for her but missing as she was yanked away from him, deep into the darkness. I can't lose you. She cried, reaching desperately for him as the shadows encased her, thick and relentless. Jack's eyes widened in horror. No. Let her go. But the shadows wrapped tighter around Sarah, drowning her screams in an unnerving silence. Help! She managed to gasp, then all went black, the laughter returning, mocking and triumphant. Jack skidded to a halt, the chilling echo of her voice haunting him as he faced the glimmering light alone now, isolated within a nightmare no one could awake from. What was waiting for him at the end? Was it salvation, or the same fate that had just claimed Sarah? The laughter swelled around him, and he ran toward the light, or toward his own ruin. Jack's heart raced as he sprinted towards that flickering light. Each step was heavy, laden with dread and the weight of Sarah's absence. The laughter echoed cruelly, swirling around him like a storm, daring him to turn back. But he steeled himself, pushing forward, determined to reach the light that promised a way out or at least an escape from the oppressive darkness. As he closed in, the light began to pulse with an almost hypnotic rhythm. Shadows flitted at the edges of his vision, whispering words he couldn't quite catch. They tickled his ears with secrets, taunting, pulling him in with the promise of revelation. He had to focus. Had to believe that Sarah was still alive, that she was waiting for him on the other side of this nightmare. His breath came in short gasps, and the walls of the hall pressed in, shimmering with a sinister sheen. The mirrors around him warped the image of his terrified face into something alien, a grotesque semblance of himself that made him shudder. This isn't real, he whispered to himself, clenching his fists. Stay strong, Jack. You can do this. With one final burst of energy, he leapt towards the light. But just as he did, a spectral hand reached out from one of the mirrors, colder than ice, grabbing at his wrist. He stumbled, falling to his knees, feeling the ground quiver beneath him. The embrace of darkness tightened once again, swirling like a tornado, trying to drag him back into the void. No. Get off me. He shouted, forcing himself to stand, shaking free of the grip that felt like death itself. Ignoring the pain shooting through his body, he propelled himself towards the light once more. But just as he thought he would reach it, the light extinguished, plunging him back into suffocating darkness. Panic seized him. No. Please. He screamed, his voice swallowed whole by silence. Then, from the abyss, a voice emerged hollow, echoing, full of mirth. You think you can escape? It taunted. She belongs to us now. You should have turned back. Jack felt a cold wave wash over him. Sarah. He shouted, voice cracking. I'm coming for you. The laughter crescendoed, mixing with anguished cries that sounded disturbingly familiar. He felt bile rise in his throat as the realization struck him, those screams were they his own? Had he already submitted to the shadows? Desperation clawed at him, and instinctively he began to crawl, reaching blindly through the blackness, hoping to find something, anything that was real. His fingers grazed over jagged edges and shapes that writhed and twisted, mirroring his fear. Suddenly, a chill swept through, sharp and stinging. He looked up. A door. It stood ajar, a thin sliver of gleaming light spilling out, beckoning him. "That's it." He gasped, scrambling towards it, hope igniting like a match in the darkness, but just as he reached for the handle, he hesitated. The laughter fell silent, replaced by a low growl, like the rumble of thunder. "Don't you dare," it warned, and Jack's heart dropped. Fueled by raw fear, he yanked the door open, spilling into the light. But nothing seemed right. The landscape before him was twisted, distorted like the reflections in the Hall of Mirrors. Jack stepped across the threshold, but the world around him began to shift. The laughter erupted once more, louder now, drowning his thoughts in a cacophony of madness. There in the distance, standing at the edge of a crumbling precipice, was Sarah, her figure flickering like a faulty bulb. "Jack! Help me!" she cried, hopelessness etched in her features. He took a step towards her, heart racing, but something held him back, a lingering pull from the darkness behind him. The shadows loomed, swaying, eager to reclaim their prize. Was this a real chance to save her, or just an illusion designed to drag him back? "Sarah!" he shouted, fighting against the overwhelming urge to succumb. "Hold on. I'm coming." But as he lunged toward her, the ground began to crumble, the laughter rising in a frenzy. He could feel the cold darkness nipping at his heels. This might be his last chance, the final moment where he had to choose. Was he willing to sacrifice everything to save her? Just before he lunged, the ground beneath him shattered, and he felt himself falling. Into what? The laughter faded into silence, and Jack braced himself for impact. What awaited him would decide everything: life or darkness, hope or despair. Would he grasp the hand of fate or let it slip away forever? Jack felt time stretch, every second dipping into an abyss of uncertainty. He was tumbling through darkness, a visceral tether to everything he understood. As he fell, thoughts of Sarah raced through his mind, memories they built together, fueling his resolve. "I'm coming!" he shouted into the void, spurred by the determination to reach her, and then, with a jolt, he landed hard on a cool surface. Shadows swirled, plotting against him, but he was alive. Jack scrambled to his feet, orienting himself. The air felt different, charged with a static energy just before a storm, yet he could sense the impending danger. Above him, a cacophony of unsettling laughter rolled like thunder. It seemed to wrap around him, twist him, mock him. But ahead, in a pulsating glow, was a familiar flicker, the very key Sarah had held. It beckoned to him, promising a chance at redemption, a possible way out. "Sarah!" he called desperately. "Can you hear me?" A shimmer danced through the air, and in the distance, he saw her, still flickering on that precipice, bound not just by darkness but by a binding of fate. "Jack!" she cried, urgency lacing her tone. "Please! I can't hold on much longer." His heart dropped, realizing the cruel specter of the shadows was tightening its grip on her. He could see it now, tendrils of darkness slithering around her limbs, drawing her toward the edge. "Hold on!" he urged, shoving his fear aside, darting toward the gleaming key. It flickered as if alive, and he grasped it tightly, its warmth radiating through his fingers. "This has to work." He hurled himself toward the abyss, the glow intensifying with each step he took, guiding him closer to her. Behind him, the shadows rumbled a warning, a promise of chaos. The laughter grew frenzied, louder, drowning out his thoughts. "You'll never reach her." The darkness taunted, creeping ever closer. "Shut up!" he roared, defiance swelling his chest. He felt the key resonating with power, a pulse that harmonized with his wildly beating heart, and he knew he had to harness it. "Let her go!" he bellowed at the creeping shadows, thrusting the key between him and the darkness. A bright light surged from its core, illuminating the warped landscape around them in a brilliant glow. The dark forms shrieked, their fear palpable, recoiling in protest. Jack dashed forward, the shadows clawing at him, but he was fueled by adrenaline now, clarity cutting through the fear. He reached Sarah just in time, grasping her wrist before the shadows could pull her away. With the key shimmering in the air before them, he shouted, "We can break this. Trust me." "Jack," she started, fear coiling in her voice, but she made eye contact. There was a spark of understanding, a tether holding them together against the encroaching darkness. "It's us against them," he shouted, and with a surge of determination, they both gripped the key together. "Let us go." As one, they plunged the key into the ground, channeling every ounce of faith, every moment they'd shared, every tear they had shed. A blinding light erupted, shooting upwards like a beacon, defying the darkness. The laughter turned to wails, the shadows writhing as they were pulled back into a swirling vortex, their solid form dissolving. "No. You won't escape." They screamed, but it was too late. They felt the ground beneath them shift, the very fabric of that night unraveling, dissolving into bursts of light. Together, Jack and Sarah were swept up, floating on rays of brilliant illumination, the shadows shrinking away. Then, silence. Jack gasped, sunlight flooding his senses, as they landed softly on solid ground. He blinked against the brightness, finally free from the suffocating darkness. They were back at the old gas station, the familiar creaking and buzzing mingled with the chirping of the nearby desert wildlife. "Did it work?" Sarah whispered, voice trembling with disbelief, searching his eyes. "It's done," Jack replied, breathless. "We beat it." As they stepped back into the now colorless station, the weight of fear lifted. The memories of terror still lingered, distant echoes, fading into the past. They stood together, the trials weaving their souls together, stronger than before. "Let us never come here again," Sarah chuckled, a soft smile breaking across her face, though it didn't hide the lingering tremor in her voice. "Agreed." Jack nodded, pulling her close. "Let us get out of here." The rising sun painted the sky with hues of dawn, soft and inviting. They walked out into the light together, stronger, tethered by the trials they endured. No longer haunted by shadows, but equally illuminated by the experiences that had changed them forever, and just like that, they stepped away from the darkness, ready to face whatever else awaited together. You need to subscribe now to our channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this dramatic end. Join the adventure, and be part of every thrilling chapter ahead.